So too is Hallam, and Porterfield! Oh, Porterfield has scored!
The FA Cup had been won. Finally, the Sunderland trophy cabinet had been furnished with another item. They continued to wait for another piece of silverware, and it all began here, at the Gradual Demise of Sunderland AFC. Bob Stokoe was teetotal, so he retired from the cup final celebrations early. Nonetheless, even before he could return to the sanctity of his room, he'd been accosted by Tottenham Hotspur manager Bill Nicholson. He offered 200 grand for his finest player, Dave Watson. This is just how it was going to be nowadays. To fend off offers like that for his best and brightest, Stokoe had to get the Rokerites back into the top flight of English football. To do so, he would go toe-to-toe with former rival Malcolm Allison and his so-called team of the 80s Crystal Palace, as well as Jack Charlton, who'd just been announced as the Middlesbrough manager. But the 73-74 campaign was so much more than domestic matters for Sunderland. Winning the FA Cup had granted them access to Europe for the very first time.
Free kick for Sunderland. There goes Hughes, and a goal! He's now only got the one man to beat. Stewart on the move, only the goalkeeper, and a fine goal!
The club prepared Roker Park to the tune of 20 grand worth of improvements to VIP suites and floodlighting just to see 2 games of football. The glory against Vasas Budapest before a seemingly landmark triumph of a Sporting that meant little after a loss in the Lisbon second leg. By the end of 73, the cup winning team had been broken up. Names like Dennis Stewart were handing in transfer requests, and the next batch of players such as Rod Belfit were proving to be expensive duds, whilst Richie Pitt's career was effectively over after a knee injury against Luton. The club ended 1973 in 11th place, long behind the advertised promise of promotion before an eventual finish of 6th behind the promoted Middlesbrough, Luton and even pissing Carlisle United. Big names such as Bobby Moncur and Pop Robson came to the club as Wembley heroes vanished, usually down to Main Road. The 1974-75 season saw even bigger names drop into the division, Manchester United to name one.
Down for Hawley, good ball, and a good shot, what a goal! What a goal!
Pearson, he waited his moment. Still Pearson. Superbly struck! Robs, Hallam, there. Davis is on the far side, Ainsko coming square, that's the ball, that's a good try, what a goal!
Sunderland kept pace with the runaway leaders United until the spring, and despite seeing Tommy Docherty's men speed off into the distance, they still ought to have built up enough of a lead over 4th place Blackpool when April began. The club had overcome waves of dispiriting form. They'd even overcome the fractured skull which Ian Porterfield received in a car accident in December 74, an injury which kept him out of the season. And whilst a dizzying defeat at Oxford hardly helped promotion matters, they were in charge of their promotion right up until the final day visit of Villa Park. Goals from Ian Ross and Brian Little ultimately the difference between Sunderland's promotion and yet another mind-numbing year in Div 2. The exodus quickened, Dave Watson, Ron Goofy and Vic Hallam all leaving Porterfield too on the brink. He would only have one more full season at Roker Park, and what a treat the home faithful were given.
Robs, Porterfield. In comes Kerr, and it's a beautiful...
Kerr, but it's there! Oh, beauty!
And it's a goal, scored by Robson.
That was Towers, oh yes!
And it's 2-0, Billy Hughes.
There wasn't a single home defeat, and only twice had Sunderland been held all campaign at home in 1975-76. Nonetheless, they were still only granted promotion by 4 points thanks to their 10 defeats and 6 draws on the road. That would need to be corrected in the top flight. They even tempted some cup magic, albeit crashing out to comparative minnows, 3rd Division Crystal Palace, annoyingly at the quarter-final stage. The season could in hindsight be declared over before it began when Arthur Cox departed as Stokoe's head coach. Whilst Ian McFarlane took over, Sunderland wilted under the intense 1st Division glare.
Must understand who scores.
Look at Cropley. Oh, it's a beautiful one! A splendid goal!
Off the back of a club record £200,000 signing in Bob Lee from Leicester City, Sunderland really needed to get their first division return correct. Their latest loss at home to Aston Villa was another brick in the wall of a dismal start to the campaign that had the Rockerites bottom of the league. That night, Bob Stokoe resigned. The board implored him to think it over until the following morning. He did so and reached the same conclusion.
Masson leaving it this time for Hollins to drive it through the wall, and somehow he got there. McClintock!
Oh, a great save by Siddle from Fairclough, but it's a goal by Square.
Ian McFarlane had taken over as Sunderland's caretaker and the results weren't much better. He had made only a slight improvement, still holding a 50% loss record, but getting the club on the board in terms of victories, first at Coventry and then at home to Spurs. Still encased within the drop zone, Sunderland sent for the man, Jimmy Adamson. Disciple of former Sunderland boss Alan Brown, Adamson hoped not to follow in his former manager's footsteps and take the Rockerites down to the second tier. Taking charge of his first Sunderland game on December the 11th, Sunderland wouldn't score in the league for exactly 2 months. For brevity, that was 9 full fixtures, and then you had to chuck this into the mix as well.
And run for him. It does now. And he's knocked it in the net. Blair's gone.
Adamson entrusted in youth and it soon began to pay off. When Sunderland won, they won well. After their first goal in 2 months came against Bristol City, they knocked Middlesbrough for 4, smashed both Wests Brom and Ham for 6 apiece, more than making up for the lack of goals. And then a run for the ages, a run for survival.
Wembley with a chance to get number 6. Has he? Yes, he has.
Adamson's team clawed back the ground with just 2 defeats in 17 matches.
But 2 goals by Everton, 1 in each half, sunk Sunderland, and indeed the score could have been even worse.
Adamson had transformed Sunderland from a hapless 9 lost in a row to one that were beaten just twice in 17 league encounters in advance of the final day's trip to Goodison Park. It was a sequence that teleported the club out of the relegation zone and into the nosebleeds of 18th. Beneath them were Bristol City and Coventry City by virtue of goal difference, and they played one another. If there was a winner at Highfield Road, Sunderland would stay up. Instead, one of the more despicable and forgotten acts in English football history.
But 29 unbroken seasons in the top flight have seen plenty of hairy moments. In 1977...
Awful moments for City now. 2-0 down, and result immediately. Donny Gill is there, headed down, and Jerry Dow sweeps it home.
And news of Sunderland's defeat at Everton was flashed onto the scoreboard by Jimmy Hill. The 2 sides played out a tame draw.
The purposely delayed kick-off combined with Jimmy Hill's incredible chinned decision to announce Sunderland's result over the tannoy ensured that both clubs knew all they had to do was drive their tie to a stalemate for both to stay up. Obviously that's what occurred. Coincidentally, both sides carried a victim from 1973. Terry Yorra for the home side, Norman Hunter for the visitors. They all but agreed between the two to beach the match into a draw. Sunderland were down, now what? Jimmy Adamson was unable to bring them back up, but did record a 6th place finish thanks to a late rush of victories in the 1977-78 campaign. That finish did belie the fact that they were a staggering 12 points from the promotion places, however. Adamson would be gone weeks into the subsequent campaign, leaving Sunderland for 73 Cup final losers, Leeds. Dave Merrington grabbed hold of those caretaker reins for all of 8 matches before joining him at Elland Road. Despite all of that managerial upheaval, Sunderland were only goal difference away from a promotion spot when Billy Elliott returned as manager.
And from Seaham, there was already a true Sunderland hero in the making, Gary Rowell.
It was missing onto that one. And that's done it.
And the chance for Rowell, and he's got it.
Wonderful results aside, Sunderland spent the 6th anniversary of their cup final heroics down at Wrexham, with promotion still a wild possibility. A win combined with the hope that at least one of Brighton, Stoke, Crystal Palace and West Ham wouldn't do the same would result in promotion.
And the goal is got. Header down. Brown. He's done
Sunderland did their bit, West Ham did theirs too, removing their possibility of promotion with a defeat at Ewood Park. That's where the good news stopped. Stoke won at Notts County, confirming their promotion. Leaders Brighton travelled to Newcastle, who were obviously no use to Sunderland, losing to the Dolphins in turn. Brighton confirming their promotion too. Then the news the Rokerites really didn't want to hear. Crystal Palace had also won at Orient. With mid-table Burnley to come in their game in hand, all Palace needed to do was draw to go up and consign Sunderland to another miserable season in Division 2. Of course, they would get the result they needed. So despite winning 3 more games than Palace and 2 more than Stoke, Sunderland wound up in 4th. The 3 points for a win rule was around the corner, however. 78-79 was a sad note as it marked the last of the 73 heroes, with Bobby Kerr the final player to bow out of the club already. Furthermore, that summer saw the brutal culling of Billy Elliott as manager, Ken Knighton dancing his way into promotion. It could have been an almighty act of self-sabotage. Instead,
4 players the other way. Here's Kevin Arnott. Oh, a lovely goal! A lovely goal!
Harry Dunn. Dunn, can he turn it in?
He's missed it! And Cummins has got it! Stan Cummins scores for Sunderland and breaks the deadlock.
despite breaking their transfer record twice, the Rokerites have been skulking around in a congested mid-table, still with designs on that long-awaited promotion because of a level playing field league. By mid-February they were still rampantly inconsistent, but crucially only 4 points off the promotion places and in 7th. Fast forward 3 months and they had yet to be beaten, their most satisfying win naturally coming at home to Newcastle on April the 5th, but a late thrashing over Watford and a point against Cardiff kept Sunderland's dreams alive of the First Division, which left Sunderland in an almost identical position to the one Crystal Palace had been in the prior season, a game in hand to win to confirm promotion after almost everyone else's season had finished. A result at home to West Ham would do it.
Was following up to drive it home. The spectators were absolutely jubilant, forcing the team to come out for a lap of honour.
Hawley with a kick. That's it, 1-0 to Sunderland.
They were conceding a pile of goals and looking embarrassingly short of confidence.
Sunderland, top of the league, 7 goals scored and against some frightening opposition as well. Even in a decade of underdog title challengers Southampton, Swansea and Watford, this run was never going to hold on for that long. They were into the bottom half by November, Knighton was gone by April, but it wasn't as if they'd slid straight back into the second division like they had done in the past. Periodical wins over teams like Arsenal and the Manchester clubs kept the Rokerites afloat despite the needless managerial shake-up. They even managed to win at Anfield to end the season in 17th, even if they were more concerned with the incoming European Cup final against Real Madrid. The summer of '81 meant a new manager, Alan Durban. It meant new faces in Ali McCoist and Barry Venison, and it also meant 3 points for a win.
Tucked in the left-hand side, 1-0 to Sunderland.
That generation of Roker fans needed to get used to their annual cliffhanger. Durban's first full season, he needed a last-day goal.
It was a miserable season, despite beginning the season with a win over reigning champions Aston Villa, despite the highlights we've just shown you. But it should be noted just how great the escape was, as Sunderland sat 6 points from safety as late as April the 9th. Then enter another young face in Colin West, who rattled off the goals as the Rokerites beat Stoke, Birmingham, Everton and West Brom in a magnificent April, with a point gained as well at White Hart Lane. That little burst was enough to finish outside of the bottom 3, but it was clear that Sunderland needed to be better in the subsequent campaign. And whilst the 1982-83 season began with another win over Villa, who had now graduated to becoming reigning European champions, and Sunderland claimed 7 points from their first 3 games, they would win just 1 game between September the 4th and December the 18th. A run that included this bullshit. Nonetheless, it would ultimately prove to be a run of 1 defeat from 14 either side of the new year that kept Sunderland up, with a minor improvement of 6 points and 3 places. The constant knife edge the club were on had only become more obvious that summer when the Roker end was closed, almost all of it demolished on safety grounds. The second game of its reopening, a 3-0 thrashing of Arsenal, prompted the aforementioned run. And despite the financial strife shared by both club and supporter, Paul Bracewell was purchased from Stoke City ahead of the 83-84 campaign for $225,000. He'd last just 1 season. The Alan Durban improvement, however, continued. Another 2 points, another 3 places, as Sunderland could officially now be called mid-table in an otherwise nondescript campaign. Well, nondescript besides the insane idea to sack Alan Durban in the February of '84. There had been progress, even if it was snail-like, and former player Len Ashurst would be handed the reins. You might have noticed that we've not really discussed much of the cup competitions, and that's probably because the club had won a grand total of 3 FA Cup matches in the past 8 years. Whilst that poor record would continue into the 84-85 campaign, they did remove themselves from their similarly absent League Cup campaigns.
To right in the striped shirt, scored twice in the space of 4 minutes in the second half, Roger Wilde getting them both.
This is Gale, and Hodgson's there again, and Hoddle made a mistake. Chisholm had a shot, and it's gone in.
He's caused plenty of problem for Watford tonight, and there's an opening here, and he scored!
Well, he went the right way.
Walker's 36th-minute equaliser wiped out Chelsea's early lead. The second goal after 70 minutes effectively ended the Londoners' Wembley campaign. It was more than the fans.
From the 2-legged conquest of Crystal Palace to the impressive triumphs over grandiose cup teams of Forest and Spurs and the removal of that Watford shame from 2 years prior, suddenly the League Cup had opened up. There might be the image of Chelsea being one of the grand English teams nowadays, or even as recent as the 1970s, but Sunderland's semi-final opponents had only just been promoted to the top flight. After dispatching of them over 2 legs, their final opponents emanated from East Anglia. Ipswich Town, the ones Sunderland wished to avoid, despite their obvious downward spiral after Bobby Robson's promotion to the England job. The team Sunderland received at Wembley, however, were Norwich City. Another Division 1 team, but comparative minnows to the Rokerites. They'd only recently graduated to top flight status and, whilst there, hadn't particularly done much. Sunderland therefore were favourites at Wembley. They more than most should have known that was a dangerous tag to hold.
It's really an afternoon when Up for the Cup has a true ring. Good play by John Dean, it's still in. Shannon, the tackle. The captain of Norwich City, Dave Watson.
In comparison to their last visit, the shoe was on the other foot, as it were. Ashurst had made enormous changes, gifting debuts to 8 players, some, like Gary Bennett, would work as his 400-plus appearances attested to. The club were as high as 7th as late as November, thanks to a pair of 3-0 wins at home to Luton and QPR. Sunderland's wheels soon fell off, with heaps of Wembley distraction and a lethal pinch of boardroom shuffling taking the club's eye off the ball. League survival. Ultimately, both League Cup finalists would go down, Sunderland winning just 1 of their final 12 games after Wembley. It plummeted them from the safe boredom of 17th, 5 points above the dotted line, to relegation with a 10-point deficit. The next season was crucial to how the rest of the decade would pan out. Laurie McMenemy, born in Gateshead, was said to have returned home when he was acquired as manager in the summer of 1985. After 12 years of underdog glory down at the Dell with Southampton, his hiring as manager could be seen as an enormous coup and almost guaranteed success at Roker Park. The reality was the stuff of pure disaster. Thankfully for his sake, there was a television blackout taking place for the first half of the 85-86 campaign, so nobody outside of the grounds was able to see Sunderland not pick up a point nor score a single goal in the first 5 matches of their return to the second division. They'd ultimately finish a poor 18th place as McMenemy brought in older heads couldn't decide on a goalkeeper, but they would make this thing they were calling the playoffs in the subsequent 86-87 season. You might think that's a good thing, and you might think McMenemy would have been able to have had enough experience to take Sunderland back up.
Up steps Mark Proctor to score. Provides the answer. Cascarino's second, a well-judged header. And soon after his third. Tack Proctor's shot deflected. And Smith's free kick, Pritchard's header. Doyle's cross and it's Gates again. Kite saves with his legs. Greenall's spot kick also saved. But after an amazing scramble, Cascarino gets the vital touch. Header beats Kite. 3 minutes into extra time, Elsie crosses, Cascarino on target. Through a Keith Birchin header.
Unfortunately, McMenemy was gone. Unfortunately, this was a relegation playoff. Unfortunately, away goals sunk Sunderland, and not even a Bob Stokoe return could stop the club sinking to the third tier of English football for the very first time. The manager had resigned after an April defeat at home to Sheffield United under the blanket of nightfall. He left a club plumbing new depth stylistically, financially and reputationally. The town, still a half-decade away from graduating into a city, was on its knees. The miners' strike was the first blow in 85, and during the 87-88 campaign, Sunderland's first in the third tier, shipbuilding in the town ceased. It could have been a knockout blow for the football club. Instead, chairman Bob Murray fought back, hiring Dennis Smith and his assistant Viv Busby. They knew the third division. Eric Gates and Marco Gabbiadini were bought for the front line and pillaged the division. John McPhail and John Kay acquired for a suddenly dependable defence. What could have been apocalyptic turned into a great Sunderland slingshot.
And it's 4-1. Atkinson back in again. And it's there from John McPhail. And Gates waiting for that one. He's got the ball. And he's put it on. Gates is waiting in the centre. For Gabbiadini. Try again. Yes. Man, he could have a shot here. It's to the far post. It's turned inside there, and yes, pot.
Sunderland were up, emphatically so, and once they had settled in Division 2 with marquee victories over Leeds, Ipswich, Brighton and Watford, 11th place was a good foundation, a stepping stone, if you will. Relegation up the road brought the return of the Tyne and Weir derby, 180 minutes of which, in regulation league action at least, during the 89-90 season, resulted in 2 draws. As Newcastle pushed for one of the 2 automatic places, Sunderland squeaked into the playoffs, which now featured 4 teams more fairly from the same division. Newcastle's stalled attempts at the automatics combined with the Rokerites' strong end to the campaign ensured they'd be on a collision course for the playoff semi-finals, and a spot at Wembley against the financially corrupt Swindon Town up for grabs.
The penalty kick. Here goes Hardiman. And Burridge has saved it. And Burridge
For Gabbiadini. Well, that's a good ball for Hours. Hours has done well. Gates! Yes! Gabbiadini gets it back. Yes! That's the goal that will send Sunderland into the final playoffs at Wembley.
For more glorious Sunderland days, you got a choice: the incredible league titles of the late 19th and early 20th century, or the Bob Stokoe inspired cup triumph of 1973. Click one of them.